Welcome to Healthy University, where we'll discuss issues and subjects on how you can live a healthier and more productive life. And now, here's your host for Healthy University, Alan Eisenberg.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Healthy You. This is your host, Alan Eisenberg, and I'm pretty excited today to have my guest. I was just reading his Kirkus review on his book, and you got an amazing review, Elijah. Kirkus is a pretty tough customer, so I think we're going to learn a lot today from what he has to say. But my guest today is Elisha Ogbonna. He's a writer, teacher, and speaker, besides his career in electrical works and quality assurance. And most of all, he is the author of Mastering the Power of Your Emotions, How to Control What Happens in You, Irrespective of What Happens to You. And what great truth that is and how we need to apply that in life. So welcome to the show, Elijah.
Thank you, Alan.
So tell me about what led to you wanting to write this book about mastering the power of your emotions. How did your experience up until that point when you decided that play into what you're doing?
Mastering emotion has been emotion has been a topic that people take for granted, I would say, because we talk more of mental problem, but what led me to start going into the study and research and to come up with the book was about 15 years ago. I was in a program, a seminar, and the speaker was talking about success. And at one point, he made mention about how fear, emotion can affect our ability to succeed in life. And so many questions was raised in the program, and even people at the point we are asking different kind of questions, even to the point that one person asks men and women, guys and ladies, who between both, who is most emotional than the other. So, but that wasn't what I expected. It kind of raised a very big uproar in the meeting, and the speaker find it difficult to be able to answer it correctly. We all went home unsatisfied with the answer. I think I decided after the program to go and deep into to do research and study and be able to know more about emotion and be able to come up with the right answer to every areas of emotion, things that has to do with our emotion, how we feel, how we act, and that was it. I started the journey about 15 years ago, and today, in 2014, I published the first edition, and I still went into studies, and this year I launched out the second edition, which is very superb.
See, that's great. And one of the things that I think, if I hear you correctly, I think we don't put a lot of understanding into what we call, or what I call, our instinctual bodies, or our emotions. So we talk about mental illness, but there's also an emotional illness. Like I talk about it all the time, where you break your fight or flight or freeze. Well, yes, there's a mental aspect to that, but that's an emotional thing as well. That's an instinct that we have. So how does that work out in terms of what you learned about, other things like jealousy or anger or all of these things that are emotions, and how we can try to gain some control sometimes over what overwhelms us?
You're right, Alan. People like our society, when there is an issue, maybe somebody's sick, we tend to talk about either the person has food, the type of food the person eat, or we relate. Usually, sickness, illness is usually related to either mental or physical. Like you're sick because of the type of food or the environment you live in, or germs, diseases. But we fail to understand that our emotion, the state of our emotion can actually affect us both physically and in terms of intellectually. It affects the whole part of our being because feeling is not something we can keep aside when we talk about being having a healthy life and a healthy lifestyle. So emotion is one of the core, a very important subject that even though we have neglected it, almost most majority of the stuff that affect us health-wise comes from emotion. There is an author called Dr. David. He stated in his book, The Magic of Big Thinking, that 80% of people in the hospital bed are suffering. He said 80% of people in the hospital bed in the hospital are filled with people that has emotional induced illness. And one of the common illness that we all know that anxiety can cause is depression. And when we talk about depression, people forget about the mental, the emotional aspect of depression, and they talk more about the mental aspect of depression. So emotion is a core. Some of the sickness starts from emotion before it goes to the mental, because you feel it before somebody started getting mental depression. You have to have certain feelings. It could be anxiety, worry, loneliness, and all that. These are feelings we experience. And when all these feelings are allowed to stay and dominate our life, it transfers to the mind, to the mental state. So our feelings, our emotion, it influences our mental capacity. When it affects the mind, it will then affect our character behavior, and from character behavior it affects personality. So that's how it happens. So emotion influences our mental capacity, and our mind influences our behavior, and our behavior influences our personality. So mental illness is a very serious aspect that right now, if our society will start paying attention to it, a lot of wrong things that have been going on, I don't think they will continue. Like, at least majority of them won't be happening because we feel more and we think less. Like, you ever hear people say, "Oh, I didn't think of doing this," but they did it because it was emotional. They felt emotion. Like, commercial people know this very well. They try to make you feel stuff that you don't even think you are spending huge money on it. People go buy stuff very, very expensive, and they come back home and they're regretting, "Oh, wow, I couldn't believe I spent such amount of money buying stuff." Why? Because the commercial has affected the emotion. They override their thinking, their capacity to reason and be able to know if that thing is necessary or not. And when emotion overrides our thinking, because it moves us to action to do stuff that maybe when we sit down and think about it, we say, "Oh, did I really do this?"
Yeah. You know, one of the things that you said that really interests me is that aspect of depression. And I just wrote this article on it about one of the things that happens in depression. I think it's called, what I was studying was anhedonia, or lack of excitement to do anything. You know, you hear about people who stay in bed and all this. And then, you know, there's a discovery that even when people recover from their depression or don't feel depressed anymore, they could still have this feeling of things that used to excite them just don't get them excited, or they just don't feel like doing it anymore. And so that's really the emotional. So you had this mental issue, and it really struck me as I was writing this article that that's really the emotional issue is I'm just not wanting to do these things anymore. And it's not that I feel depressed anymore or anxious or all these things. I just have this lack of want. So, you know, what have you discovered sort of about how people fall into sort of that emotional, I don't know, hole or whatever it is, and how they can get themselves out of that? Like, you know I get myself out of it by going and doing it, because by the time I'm there doing it, now I'm having fun. But is that really, what the discovery is that you sometimes have to battle what I say, my mind, to go have emotional fun, that they are really two separate things.
Yeah, the mind and emotion, they are separate, but uh, uh, there is a thin line between the emotion and the mind. Because what happens to the emotion affects the mind, and what happens in the mind affects the emotion. So it's back and forward. But the
Mm-hmm.
emotion sometimes is stronger, and when it is very, very stronger, it can overpower the mind. Despite how much you think, oh, this is wrong, but your feeling is pushing you to do it. You see people commit like rape and all that, and when somebody become emotionally charged, and there is no like strong knowledge and balanced thinking, that person can be very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So emotion influences our thinking, and how how much how much attention we pay to our emotion and be able to understand how it works helps us manage it with our thinking, like our decision making and our reasoning. If you know how something works, if you know how our equipment works, you can be able to know how when to pause it and when to turn it on and how to reduce it, to pipe it down. Yeah, there have been some article or blogs or whatever that people have put up, like they're telling women that if their husband is angry, they should put water in their mouth and say nothing. So that is a kind of how people try to find a means to be able to turn or pause the emotion. But like I said, that is not the best technique to handle emotion.
Right.
You
Right.
can do that once, but next time you may not be able, because it might work one time, but the next time you will not be able to carry out the same techniques, because emotion, when you don't release a particular emotion, it stays, and when another one comes in, it joins the existing one, and they become like double. And when that one is not released too, another one comes in, so it keep accumulating, keep piling up, piling up, piling up. That is at the point that people explode. And
Yeah.
just like the what happens in I did science in school. There's this law called Hooke's law.
Mm.
Hooke's law is one of the laws, is the law of elasticity. If you have a band, elastic band, you can stretch it. When you stretch an elastic band, when you get to a point, it will not be able to come back to its original state. Now, what
Right.
happens when you keep piling up the feelings and you don't release it? It will get to a point that it becomes too much that you cannot return to your original state. It has totally taken over the entirety, the whole system of a person, that the person at the slightest, even the smallest thing, he can explode and maybe go
Mm.
out something dangerous.
Well, I know I talk about bullying a lot in youth, and I have very strong feelings about that damage that can be done to a youth through bullying or abuse of any type can lead to the long-term damages, both mentally, emotionally, physiologically. Um, I think what do you feel happens to youth when that happens and they grow up with this damage to them?
In terms of emotion and bullying, people tend to separate it. They tend to think about bullying as physical art. But before any physical art, whatever we do in life, there is mental part and there's emotional part. You have to feel it before you do it. Before you say anything, you feel it. You feel like talking or you feel not to talk. So there have been so many definitions about bullying, but because I major in emotion, I would define bullying as any negative emotional attack on someone else's emotion that impacts that person negative. Because the action is a negative one. So the bully has a negative
Mm-hmm.
feeling, negative
Mm-hmm.
emotion, and he uses that to attack the other person.
Oh, yeah, Yeah, definitely.
hurt him and impact him emotionally too, negatively. So when bullying takes place, two things happens. The bully tends to feel that it is a way to release bad feeling or to feel have some level of satisfaction. But the act of bullying doesn't take away that feeling from the bully. That's why when you bully one, you tend to bully another.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
don't stop. So a bully is always a bully, despite how much until that emotional problem is released or harnessed or channeled to another means, that person will keep being a bully.
So,
So
yeah. So how hard is it, for either a bully or the bullied to, as they become an adult like we are, um, deal with that emotional damage that was done, those emotional scars, and try to master a better plan of getting over it?
it's not really hard, but what makes it difficult for people to change generally is being able to acknowledge they have the problem. Like when you talk to people, you have this problem, you have this addiction, you don't have you have a serious issue. They'll say, no, I'm okay. Doesn't matter, I'm okay. But with people, when you realize that, oh, it's a problem, then you can sit down and try to figure out what's going on with me, who has wronged me. Some of the bullies are people that come from a broken home, abusive home, abusive parent, and some of them have had different experiences that is very horrible, like very
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
very horrible experience in life, and they grow up because of that problem, the emotional problem they have during their growth stage. When they become an adult or when they are in the high school, they try to express those bad feelings that they couldn't express at home against other students. So when you realize that, when they can realize that this is a problem, they have deficiency, they have some inadequacy in something that they're trying to use something else to feel complete. So if they can sit down and think about their life and what the consequences of their action, how it is impeding their ability to succeed or
Mm-hmm.
take a very good course in life and be able to become successful in life, then that's the beginning. It's foundational for the change. So
Mm-hmm.
the bully need to understand that bullying is an emotional problem.
Yeah.
There may be mental part of it, but if they can handle their problem of past experience and realize that all the offenses and hurt they have kept inside need to be released.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said in my book, there are various ways to you can release your emotion. You get to sit down, talk to somebody, and when you talk to somebody, something happens.
Mm-hmm.
Open up that the very something, the anger or pain or hurt you
Yeah.
have inside of you. Like,
Well, it's like emotional suppression. When we try to
yeah,
suppress our emotions, it's like you said, it's eventually going to snap back on us. We're gonna snap. We have to take a really quick break, but when we come back, I know you have 5 laws of how to handle your emotions, and I want to hear those and talk about that and the other work. So if you'll stay with me, Elijah, we'll be right back with more Healthy You.
You're listening to Healthy University with Alan Eisenberg.
Hi, this is Alan Eisenberg again. Welcome back to Healthy You. I'm here with Elisha Ogbonna. He is the writer of Mastering the Power of Your Emotions, How to Control What Happens to You, Irrespective of What Happens to You. And we were just talking about, I think, emotional suppression and how we handle our emotions. But I know that a big part of your work and something you've really structured are the 5 laws of emotions. Can you go through those with us and talk about it?
Sure. Um, there are 5 laws of emotion that every human being should know and be able to understand how it works. Understanding how these laws of emotion works will help anyone having problem with feelings, expressing their feelings of trouble, relating with people, like people's management, leadership skill, and all that. You need to know these laws because it will help you know when you are wrong and when somebody else has wronged you. Very important. So the 5 laws of emotions are: number one is the law of expression. Our emotion want to be expressed, and it's a law. And that feeling, that anger, that thing your happiness, joy want to be expressed, anger want to be expressed, sadness, jealousy, they want to come out. So the law of expression. So it's always important to know that what you feel is calling you to act.
Mm.
And the understanding that will help you think twice and know how you can act. Is it the right time to act? There is right time to act. Sometimes you have to wait. So
Mm.
that's one thing you need to know. If there is a quarrel, a heated quarrel between couple, sometimes one has to stay calm and wait for some minutes. Maybe the next day you talk to the other person before you know it, the issue is resolved. But the most important thing is that you got to express emotion.
Yeah.
Just keep quiet or and say it's gone. Let's forget about it. It's gone.
But it's never forgotten about. I mean, that's what we know, right?
It's
Yeah.
there. It's right within you. So emotion has to be expressed. So that's number one. Number two is the law of repression. The law of repression states that your emotion cannot be buried. You cannot actually bury emotion. If you try to bury emotion, you bury it alive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always in you. It stays there in you. You gotta make sure find an outlet, a way, a means to express it. If you don't express it, it can be quiet. But when another thing comes up, it adds up. It keep adding. Before you know it, it get to a breaking point. The person will explode.
Yeah. And you're really not being your authentic self. I mean, your authentic self is who you are, who you show up emotionally, physically, and when you suppress that, yeah, you're not doing yourself any justice or the people around you so they can get to know you. Because eventually they'll be like, well, who the heck is this person acting like this? Because that wasn't the way you acted before.
Sure, that's repression. Repression is the most dangerous part of the law of emotion. That's why you see people they carry gun, go slaughter people, many people because they have this problem and they don't know how to express it because they don't know how to express it. They repress it and they keep adding. Maybe a student is not happy with the class or the subject, or at the workplace, a worker is not happy with a boss, and he been keeping quiet and keeping quiet. He don't want to change job, probably because he's afraid that he may not get job maybe for a long time or there's no job available. So stuff like this, you keep piling up stuff within you before you know it, they lead to a point that the person will explode. So that's the law of number 2 law, which is the law of expression.
Yeah, and that,
Uh,
it's funny when you talk about that because I agree on some of these points, especially with some of these shootings or violent acts. Is what happens is when you give up on yourself and when you see no value of your own life, then you devalue everyone else's, and
you're
then
right.
that leads to that violent act.
Just like the 3 legs of depression is hopelessness. When people feel they are hopeless. Number 2, when they feel that they are helpless, and the third one is when they feel that they are worthless. So
Mm.
people that go deep, like the episode of depression, like it goes from uh, one level to another. It goes from hopelessness, helplessness, and worthlessness. So these are the people that they have this emotion that have accumulated to the point that it tells them that there's no hope.
Yep.
So what's your life? Your life is meaningless. When you feel your life is meaningless, so what's the point? So that's
And that's again that's the point. That's the dangerous point of suicide or deciding that life has no value, which is really what I think. If we talk about what we see going on, in America right now, or in a lot of places where, people are using guns and killing. The thing that we don't understand is they don't have the value of life that we have. They don't value their own lives. In many cases, they end up taking their own lives, but they don't value anyone else's.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. So that's a good thing on the laws. Yeah.
When people don't value their own life, they don't value somebody else's life.
Yeah.
When people don't have respect for their self, they don't respect other people. So
that's what I say. You gotta love yourself.
It's what you have, you give. You cannot give what you don't have. So when people are hopeless and they feel helpless and they are worthless, they feel other people's life are worthless too. So that's the two extremes of emotion. The two major extremes of emotion is either people get to the point that they kill themselves. Suicide is either suicide or they go out for homicide. So it's two ways. It's either you kill yourself or both.
See, and I say that's a thin line as well. Like you were talking about the thin line. I think it's a very thin line for someone to make that decision. Again, it depends on the person. If they feel worthless inside themselves and they're not really looking outwardly, then they're probably going to take their own life. But if they look outwardly and they say, there is no value in life in this world, well, that's a bigger issue. Now they've devalued the lives of everybody, including themselves.
You're right. Yeah. So those I've mentioned the first two: expression, repression. The third law of emotion is transmutation. That's when you start handling the issue of how you can take care of how you feel. Very, very important. Transmutation is it follows the law of change. How you cannot actually change your feeling, but you can direct it to another. Have a way to direct it. Like emotion can neither be created. The law states that emotion can neither be created or destroyed. But you move it from one direction to another. Like when you feel sad, you can channel your anger to something else that will become profitable. You see some people that leave their school, like drop out. They are angry about their life and they want to be successful. They work hard. You see them will work hard. Some people have been able to work because they're angry about something. They channel their anger into their work. When anger is channeled into work, so the person committed to the work so hard and become successful. So things like that happens when people have this emotion, particular emotion that is negative. You can have a way to channel it to make it become something useful. To do that, you have to understand your temperament.
Yeah, and that's really the transmutation, right? Is you're taking something that's on the negative side and you're finding a power within it to bring it back over to a positive emotion.
You're right. Yeah. You have to understand your temperament. Like I know, for me, I'm an introvert. When I was young, I don't used to come out here to the public and say so. I remember in the classroom when I was in my elementary school, and in elementary school, and between my grade 7 and 9, I was so shy that the teacher would literally point at me to ask me questions before I answer questions in the class. But even though I know the question, but I was too shy.
Yeah.
So to be able to overcome that feeling, I had to undergo the change that happened to my life came through self-education, learning about how to have the courage to speak. I read books. I started acting out what I read. So the way you do it, you get the knowledge. Education is very, very important in releasing emotion. Get to know something about your feelings. Get to know about emotion. Get to know how your temperament works.
Yeah.
So by knowing how something works, you can be able to know how to control it, take care of it. Education.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't study emotion. We don't study empathy. We don't study so many things that, we really should, and then we end up studying them in the wrong places, like a therapist's office. Well, it's not the wrong place, but it's the only place later you can end up doing it.
Besides not studying it, people have a kind of particular view about the word. Like sometimes when people hear that I wrote a book about emotion, they think it's about love, they think it's about sex. But they don't know that emotion has to do with everything about our feelings, both anger and fear. So it's very, very broad, and because most people don't know that it's that broad, they think it's just one particular thing that has to do with romance, feelings, and love, sex. So emotion is very, very broad, and educating oneself about this stuff, especially the negative emotion, is very, very important, like anger, like fear. So many people have turned their back at the verge of their success because of fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think fear is a very strong emotion, and it's one that's very controlling, right? It's one of those emotions that we tend to, it's in the back of our minds, and we don't realize how many things we're not doing because we're fearful. And then we try to, we're not spending time analyzing, well, what is the fear? Is it a rational fear? Is it a irrational fear, right?
You're right. Fear. Virtually everybody has fear. Even
yeah.
if you have people that stay on stage, most popular speakers, they have admitted that once in their life, or even at that very point in their life, they still have some element of fear before they come up to stage to speak. But how do you overcome fear? Very simple. Fear is telling you not to do it. Dare to do it. Try to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's either between two things. It's either you get it or you don't get it. It's either you perform very good or you perform poorly. So there's no, if you don't, it's better you try it. And 100% or most of the time when you give it a try, you get the best. But fear will put you back.
Yeah. And it eventually, dissipates as you're, I think with public speaking, we talk about that fear of public speaking. But once you're up there and then you're talking about the things it just naturally goes away. You just start to focus on the things you know. Yep. So what's the fourth law?
But the fourth one, I've mentioned expression, repression, transmutation. The fourth one is the law of transference. This is what you see, like most psychologists, they do it. Like they get to a patient that has problem with emotion, anxiety, and other. They get you to sit down and talk from your heart, every of your experience. So as you walk backward to those feelings, and as you talk to the person, if that person is empathetic enough to feel those stuff that you are communicating, it's the burden is shared. It's either lifted completely or is shared, and there's some level of release you have through that. So that's the law of transference. It can be done positively or negatively. Like some people, when they're angry, they have to hit, throw tantrum or break something to have some of feelings, some have to fight in order to transfer that anger to another person. So what they do? Some people do is either they take that they're feeling and put it on someone else.
Yeah.
You see,
and they want them to feel the same way they do. And
we want you to feel miserable as they are.
Yeah, we know kids love to do things like that. Little kids or even teenagers, want you to feel what they're feeling.
Yeah.
And of course we don't, because we've already gone through that. We know what that feels like. It's not fun.
Yeah.
So what's the fifth law?
So the fifth law is the law of diminishing return.
Mm.
So it shows how the balance within us happens. Like if you have fear, the more you release it, the more you replace it. Like it's like there's no vacuum in life. There's no vacuum in your system. You have to take out something to put in something. So it's diminishing return. When one is going down, the other one is coming up. When one is going down, the other one is coming up. And it will get to a point that it will disappear completely.
Yeah. Okay. That's it. Those are great. I mean, just the thought that you put into that, and the way that you describe the five laws and how they work. I think we don't think about those things. We just don't, and you did, and I think it sounds like you've really put together a good book that helps people understand not only the emotions that they're dealt, that they come up with, that their society and their mental abilities have given them, but also solutions to deal with them. Because we do. It's like, the count to 10 rule. It's amazing, when you can stop and count to 10.
Yeah.
In the midst of an argument, like, could you do that? And when you do learn to do it, a lot changes. Well, we're coming to the end of the show, so I like to ask my guests one question. It's kind of a surprise one for you, for them, but usually, you have an answer that deals with what you've learned in writing your book. But how do you today live a healthier and happier existence than you did prior?
To live healthy, I have to take care of my three most important aspects of my life, which is my physical life, my mental life, that is the spiritual, the intellectual, and the physical. So the soul level, which has to do with three-dimensional part of me, which is the mind, emotion, and the will. So these are three-dimensional part of human being. I make sure I take care of it, because if one is down with time, it's gonna affect the other. If my emotion is down with time, it's gonna affect the other. So I try to eat healthy. When you eat healthy, you take care of your physical. When you exercise, you take care of food, and exercise take care of the physical.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people don't know, but serotonin is developed in the gut. So when you eat right, you're actually helping your brain and your emotions.
Yes.
Because you're feeling more better, because the serotonin is what keeps everything moving sort of in a positive manner.
Yes.
So that's a good answer. So how do people get in touch with you? How can people find out more about you and your book and the work you're doing?
Yeah, my website is my first name and last name .com, www.elishaogbonna.com. And if you go to my website, there is a contact me page where anybody that wants to contact me or that has any question, whatever it is, any question, even outside emotion, you can ask me whatever. If I don't know it, I will tell you I don't know. But just get in there, say something, and ask your questions. You never know what you could learn from what I will say. And just go to my page, www.elishaogbonna.com, contact page, leave your name, your email address, and your question or comment.
Yeah, great. And now we'll have that link on the webpage with the podcast. So, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I think what you're doing is fascinating work. And again, that idea that we really do have these two things to deal with, the mental health and the emotional health. And they really go hand in hand in many cases, that where we see you have to really work on both. So I love that. I love what you're doing.
You can't rob Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, exactly. So thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for being on Healthy You.
Thank you very much, Alan, for having me. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Great. And this is Alan Eisenberg with Healthy You. Please join us next time.
Thank you for listening to Healthy University, brought to you by Bullying Recovery, LLC. This podcast does not replace the need for medical advice, professional diagnosis, opinion, treatment, or services to you or any other individual. The information provided here or through linkages to other sites is not a substitute for medical or professional care, and you should not use the information in place of a visit, call, consultation, or the advice of your physician or other healthcare provider. Join us next time for more Healthy University.